You're watching a Facebook Live on CGTN Europe. My name is Zhang Yingyi. With lockdown eases and pubs and restaurants are allowed to reopen in England from July 4, we're joined today by two pub owners, Gary Murphy from London, who runs a 400-year-old pub, and Anthony Yao from Shanghai, who have just opened a brand new 1,000 square meter pub selling Dublin beer. We'll hear from them first-hand stories on how they have kept the pub going during the pandemic and will the pub culture returns as they reopen. So first of all, very warm welcome to both of you gentlemen.
Hello.
Hello. Hi. So may I start by asking each of you to introduce yourself and your pub, please. Gary, and can I start with you, please?
Yes, as you mentioned, I run a 450-year-old pub. It's located in Barnet, which is on the outskirts of London. I've run it for 12 years. It's a lovely old community pub in a lovely little town. We've built it up over the 12 years and held a steady trade for the last 8 years. And it's a drink-led pub. So that means that we sell much more alcohol than we do food. Indeed, it's 95% plus alcohol and only a few percent of food. And we have events, including live music. We have quizzes, we have bingo, we have various community clubs that meet around. People come to socialise within their own groups and also to meet other people. So it's a fantastic venue.
So I think we have just saw the pub on the screen just now. It's in North London, I understand.
Yes, it's on the Great North Road, which used to be historically the main road between London and the north of England and going on to Scotland. So yes, it's a very iconic pub because it's one of the last remaining coaching inns, and it's in pretty good condition. I think we've got a video later, or here we've got a video of it, and we're currently only open for takeaway. So the main entrance, which is there, has a no entry sign on it. You enter by the side gate, and traditionally that would have been where the horses from the carriages would have been taken in and stabled, and the human beings would come into the inn for some refreshment. And as you can see, it's all wood and brick and exposed beams. It's little rooms. We have a bar, and people come to the bar rather than table service. This particular area of the pub is a Victorian fit out. So it's about 130 years old, those wood panels. And we have lots of real ales, which is English ale, which is a natural sort of beer product that is vented using air.
It's very British and traditional.
Very British and traditional. So we've got various areas, as you saw there at the front. I showed you the toilets here when I videoed it, because you can see the size of them. They're quite small. So for COVID purposes, we've got lots of challenges there because it's full of little corridors. But we do have this fantastic garden, which we're going to go a walk around. And just before we do it, that's the bit on the other side of the gates that I told you that the horses would come through. So we've got seating in there. The garden has some canopies above it, so we can cover it from the English rain, which is can be quite frequent. So people can sit out there in all weathers, although in the winter it does get rather cold. And at the back there we've got a horse and cart, and that cart is actually an original cart that's from the late 1800s.
It's very big already compared with other pubs in UK, I think, in London.
It's a good size, and there's another bit to it. There's the stables, which is currently being refurbished because we've taken the opportunity of closure to do some essential maintenance work. It's a decent size pub, but it's got lots of challenges for COVID purposes because it's narrow in places. It doesn't give you the social distancing that the restrictions might require.
I see. That's very nice and seems to be a very comfortable community pub. And Anthony, I know that you have just opened a brand new 1,000 square meter pub in Shanghai. Would you like to introduce it to us?
Yep. Hi. So we are based in Shanghai, and that we are the first Guinness flagship store outside of Dublin. And the basic concept of it is that we combine a merchandising store, a pub, and a restaurant together in this 1,000 square meters. And we do not just beer, we also try to get creative with Guinness itself, the stout itself. In that we make cocktail out of it, we make food, localized food, and also Western food. Using Guinness as the main source of ingredient. Example would be we have localized brew meat, brew pork, and it's brewed with Guinness as the ingredient. So that's the idea of it. We try to get creative with this, and we were open in December 19th, and since then after a month of operating. We are closed for Chinese New Year as expected, but as followed by Chinese New Year, it was a COVID situation where we were closed for another extra month, and we're open within the first week of March. So what you see right here is a pub area, and we encourage people to pour their own beer and to see the fun out of it. Pouring a stout and see all to be more interactive with the brand itself.
Yeah, I think I have the video here. I can show probably a little bit of your pub. So it has just been opened for less than a year, and then you have to close when the lockdowns imposed in Shanghai.
Yes, that's correct. We were at the very beginning. I think we had the good momentum going, and in terms of promoting our place, we have just started to promote our place via social media, via through various ways we're promoting our place. But in the end, the situation hits, so a lot of effort has gone to waste. So this is a video of our opening on December 19th. This is our first floor. It includes a merchandising store, and when you go up the stairs, this is a restaurant, and this is a pub. The pub is generally the most popular place in this restaurant, and we have our opening within the mall that we're situated in. A lot of influencer and a lot of partners have joined us in this opening party.
Seems to be in a very posh area of Shanghai.
We are situated within within Jing'an Temple, which is relevant to the city center, downtown city center of Shanghai. We're surrounded by mostly office buildings, and we are highly accessible via public transport, and it's a great location.
Yeah, definitely. Because I want to ask both of you gentlemen, obviously the hospitality industry is one of the industries that's being hit the hardest during the pandemic. So when the lockdowns were announced, did you realize what this means for your business?
Do you want me to go first?
Yes.
Although I was locked down after Anthony, I'll go first. I mean, basically, I thought we'd be locked down for 3 weeks. And now I find the extraordinary situation that we're locked down for 4 months now. We're due to open in about 9 days' time on the 4th of July, and that will be 4 months. The government has been very helpful in the sense that they've paid for our staff to be sitting at home, and also they gave us a grant of about £25,000. But unfortunately, after 4 months, we're much more than that in debt. Our landlords still want the rent, and we still have all the other bills to pay, and all the other costs that would have been stretched over 12 months now have to be stretched over 8 months. Plus, we're facing restrictions when we open. So I think the length and the cost of the lockdown has been a bit of a shock. And it must be more so almost for Anthony, because at least I'm a long-established business. I've been there for 12 years. You know, in saying that, I probably get the advantage as well. I've got a good, solid community customer base, and I've kept in touch with them through social media, and also by the takeaway service. The takeaway service only generated a couple of £100 a week, but it gave me a great opportunity to see and meet and keep in touch with my customers, and I've really, really enjoyed that.
So, well, let me talk about the situation of we're in, and how we have how we felt when we first heard about lockdown. As I was saying that it was Chinese New Year holiday, so we're supposed to close anyways. So we're closed down for a month, and then I was in Hong Kong personally, and with my family, and then I received this news that we're going to be closed for another month. At first, I got a little bit excited that, oh, there's a new holiday, but after a while, after 2-3 weeks, you see the in terms of social mobility wise, like our staff, at least half of our staff could not come back from their hometown, where they spend the Chinese New Year holiday. So there are a lot of changes evolving drastically, and that it's getting less and less about the first thing we have to think about is more about how we're going to face these changes, especially when it comes to human resources, when it comes to the cost of the rent, and we really have to plan everything out in advance to think how we can do it, how we can face these challenges.
Did you get any support from your government for rent and staffing costs?
It really depends on the situation. Pubs to pubs is different. For us, we haven't got a lot of support from our government. The government did a really good job in providing the guidelines and the support needed for the health on the health side. But in terms of financial support, because we are dealing with a private landlord, so we don't get the government support in terms of rent. But in terms of staffing, the government allowed us to pay minimum wage for a limited amount of time, which we have done so in both cutting our staff size and having some staff on minimum wage. And that really helped us in terms of managing the cost.
That must be quite a shock then, because I mean, the one thing the British government did was meet all the staff costs, or 80% of them. So that was a huge burden. It saved us making them redundant, and then having to find new staff or trying to re-recruit them at the end of it. So it was a really good move by our government.
our government also done a really good job in terms of providing the safety measures, but in terms of financial support wise, the cutting the staff, allowing to put our staff to a minimum wage, that really that changed the dynamic. That's surprisingly the very little of the staff have left us, even when we pay minimum wage. But at the same time, the costs have been lowered because of the minimum wage. Or if it's not because of COVID situation, we'll never be able to do that.
Yes. So how long were you closed in total?
Almost 2 months. We were closed for almost 2 months after 1 month operating. So
did you have a good first month?
Yes. There were a lot of momentum going, as I was saying. We're buying a lot of advertisement, a lot of influencers come to our place, and we had the feeling of we're going to be the next big thing. But the COVID comes, so it's a good time to restructure ourselves and rethink about our positioning and be calm a little bit.
It is a bit of a shock, isn't it? I mean, I never imagined anything like this would ever happen. And it's completely out of our control, isn't it? Because we're told to close. We can't do anything about that. And we just have to accept it. And we're given whatever support the government chooses to give us. And we have to do it. So it's the first time in 12 years the business has not really been in my control. And I find that a bit difficult to deal with.
For us, I mean, we opened in December, as I was saying, after 1 month operating, 2 months closed. We literally picked the worst time in the past decade to open this bar. That's a joke I told myself.
It's probably the worst time in 200 years. It's probably the worst time in 200 years.
If you don't count the world wars and all that, I think this is the worst.
even in the world wars, the pubs were open. You know, that's what everyone says in England. Even during World War I and II, the pubs didn't get closed.
Yeah, but we do throughout this period, we do observe a lot of changes in terms of consumer behavior. And we're more laid back in observing and learning about our consumer. That's one of the key takeaways that we have throughout this lockout. And that's, to give an example, because China is probably 2 months ahead in terms of the COVID situation, is that it's always a lookout for news related to COVID. For example, last week, the situation in Beijing, the possible resurgence of the COVID situation, we saw clearly that what we have accumulated to build up the traffic has dropped down drastically again because of some news. It hasn't really affected Shanghai yet, realistically speaking, but the news itself, it's already scary. So people are getting more sensitive on news, more sensitive about their health being. That is a clear trend that we see.
Yes, we are very sensitive to that here too. People are worried, and they will be worried about coming back to the pub. So how did you adapt your business to any new guidelines? What were those guidelines?
The new guidelines. So for us, we have the health guidelines. There are a few key things. Number one, the social distancing. Each table has to be 1.8 meters apart. To do that, arranging that, we know that what was supposed to fit 250 people capacity will be cut in half. So knowing that we will, and knowing that we can only fill in 100 people, it's still not guaranteed that we can fill this place up because the traffic is just so unstable. And another guideline we have is that we have a health QR code an app on our phone that shows if the consumer has been in touch with, or the customer has been in touch with someone in a high risk exposure area. So we have to check that at all times. Our staff has to wear gloves and wear masks at all times. And then these are the key measures that I can think of right now. And then we clean our space every hour with alcohol, with cleaning alcohol. So in terms of cost, that put a little bit burden onto us, but that is manageable. The key here to adapt is from the consumer perspective, is that we have to depict ourselves as a safe place in terms of our communication when we talk to our customers, and when we put out ads about our place. The angle to cut in is more that come to us because we are safe. We have open area. We have a terrace for you. So it's safe for you to come here. That's a key message that we've adapted to.
Well, we've just had our guidelines printed actually yesterday, and they're very similar to yours, although our government had been insisting upon a 2-metre distancing, but they've now said 1 metre, which is pretty good under the circumstances, and it's 1 metre with other measures, so you can have tables back to back that are 1 metre apart, which means you get more in, because the key for us is it's almost cheaper to be closed if you can't open at the right capacity, because you have all the staff costs. And I don't know about you, but we do a 12, 13-hour day. So it's a long day to be paying costs and having facilities running, plus the rent is at full rate as well. So we've just had our regulations, and it's risk-based, and we've all got to do a risk assessment, and it will be much the same as you. So some thinning out of chairs. You saw my pub in the video. It's full of little rooms and little corridors, and so it's a little bit tricky, but by reducing to 1 metre, it's given us some hope that we can do it. We have got a lot of different types of space, so we've got a lot of choice for the customer. As you mentioned, the outside terrace, if people are nervous about coming to the pub, then we're going to promote that we have lots of different areas. You can sit inside, or you can sit outside. You can come on a busy day, which is a Friday or Saturday, or a busy time, which is the evenings, or you can come at a quiet time. So the customer can choose what they want to do. Masks aren't compulsory for either staff or customers, but I'm going to encourage and probably require our staff to wear face shields, not necessarily masks, and we're going to put in some shields at the bar so that people can pay at the bar and be shielded from the person next to them, so we can still keep that sort of operational. We're going to take drinks to tables, which is something we haven't done before. We're probably going to have drop-off points rather than leaning over customers at tables. Again, I think that's for both the benefit of staff and customers. But it's lots of challenges. And I've got a customer base that's really keen to come back. But how long they can sustain it, and how high that trade gets, will it return to my normal level? I don't think that's going to happen for a while, because there's certain things I can't do. That I can't, I probably fit about 90 people in at the most. I can't have the busier Friday and Saturday nights. Usually I've got 130 or 20 on a Friday and Saturday night. I won't be able to have that. I've got live music on a Sunday night. Live music isn't permitted at the moment. I need to look at how our clubs will be able to operate, and our quizzes and our bingo. So there's lots to think about there. But each component makes up the total trade, as you can imagine. So I'm unsure whether I'm going to be in a profitable position. I don't think. But if I could break even or minimize my losses, I'll be reasonably happy. But Anthony, have you managed to make a profit, or are you now just breaking even or making a loss?
Well, when we first received the notification from the government letting us know that we can open, we also face the same situation or same question dilemma that is you, is that whether we will make a profit or whether we will manage a cost from keeping closed or open it. Our thinking and logic was that there are a lot of bars out there that are out of business in Shanghai. We don't want to put out a message that we are out of business after a month of opening. So that's the thinking behind why we force ourselves to open and continue to put ourselves out there, is that we want to let people know that we are here. And customers slowly pick up on that, knowing that we are open, and then there's a phase where people start to go back to work. So we see one phase of a point of one turning point. Another turning point is nowadays we're surrounded by a few schools, so schools are open as well. So that's another very intriguing sign. And thirdly, we only got our performance live music permit last week. So these are the good signs that come gradually over a long period of time. And whether we are making a profit yet, well, as a fellow bar owner, is that it's very hard for any bar or restaurant to make a profit straight away. But we are now managing our loss at much more manageable size compared to when we first opened in March. So we see some very, very encouraging signs on that.
So will you actually make a profit for the year, or are you expecting a loss?
Well, I think in terms of operation costs, I think we will be able to cover that. But when we'll break even, I'm expecting to break even within 2 to 3 months of time. That's what we're expecting. And I'm not going to put my hopes too high and expectations too high in making a large profit straight away and covering our sunk costs. That could be unrealistic given the situation like this. It's more about managing the loss right now.
Yes, I mean that's exactly the position I'm in. You know, it's not whether I'll make a profit; it's how much loss I'll actually make for this year. Is there any signs there? You're 2 months open. Is there any signs there that that the government are going to relax the restrictions?
In terms of at first, it was more of a government regulation or a restriction that they impose on us by force, that we have to keep distance and all that. And after a while, it becomes a social habit. People come in wearing masks, wash their hands everywhere, and it's about following the norm and makes customers feel very confident and comfortable in the environment. So whether the government release these regulations or lax down the regulation, we will continue to keep the measures, because we truly care about making this a safe environment for our customers.
But restricting tables at 1.8 meters and restricting the number of people in the venue, surely you don't want to keep that as a restriction.
Of course, but there are also other ways to manage it, in that we are doing more seasonal menus for our restaurant to drive up the average check. So that helped to cover it. We have also started the delivery service. Delivery service also helped in some way to relieve the pressure. So I think it's more about coping. If you have, as a customer, if you walk by my bar and you see it's packed with people, as a customer, I would not feel confident in going to this bar given the situation of COVID.
Right, okay. See, there's a different perception of COVID in the UK. And we haven't suppressed it, I don't think, as much as China. I think that's right to say from what I see in our media. It's passed more around the population here. So there is a view. There's two views. One is people are very scared and very nervous, but the other view is at the other extreme, that it's, whilst it's a new disease and we know it's not flu, it seems to attack the same people that flu would, who are older and have other health conditions primarily. And the death rates aren't as high as originally thought. Originally, we were thinking 3%. It's now looking about, I don't know, 0.6 or something. So that's a lot lower. So there's two extremes here. There's people who are absolutely terrified and people who are quite relaxed about it. Is that the same in Shanghai?
The general view of Shanghai is that I think we're pretty unified in that we don't, no matter if the death rate is high or not, doesn't matter if the death rate is high or not, doesn't matter if it's the same as the flu, because I don't think we have been through the flu here, or we don't have the situations as impactful, is that we try to avoid at all costs to there's one view that we don't want it. We just don't want it no matter what.
Yeah.
So there are some groups that will say that I don't mind as much nowadays, but in the general speaking is that we've been through SARS here. We've been through well, this is I say the second worst when it comes to SARS. So we've been through the same similar thing, and that we just don't want it to be surrounding us, and at all costs we'll avoid social interactions at the very beginning.
Okay, that's interesting because it's very, very different here. You know, there's a huge skepticism around it. Whilst we know it's real and we know it's happening, and there's been lots of deaths and serious injuries, people still believe that we'll develop immunity and that it is more flu-like than SARS-like, if you know what I mean.
We are. I think the death rate has been quite low around the world now, and it's more or less a curable disease, arguably. But it's more about the social impact it would have, in that it's highly dispersible. So one person have it means the entire restaurant will have it. So that is what we're most concerned about as a citizen, in that I don't want this community to be infected by this disease, and kind of like affect all the people surrounding me.
Yes, I mean, at the same time, there is a pragmatism in England that you know, it's airborne, it's surface on the surfaces. So can you actually stop that? It's like trying to stop a viral cold. You know, once it goes round, and it's very much what the risk is to normal people, and a strategy might be to shield the vulnerable. So those who are susceptible to falling seriously ill or dying from it, make sure they're particularly shielded, and let the rest of us run our lives normally. You know, it's a bit like you have compulsory masks, whereas we don't have compulsory masks. You know, other than on the tubes and public transport more generally, people are free to choose to wear a mask or not. So
yeah, definitely. But how would it affect you in terms of when you open your pub? How would you? What kind of stance would you take? Would you be an extremely cautionary type, or would you be the accepting what's going to come type?
Well, do you know, it's interesting. You know, we have the regulations. Even though we've only had them for 24 hours, I've been thinking about it for weeks. I've come up with the different pay points at the bar and screens there. We've got face masks for the staff. We've got sanitizer stations throughout. We've got increased cleaning regimes. But I'm very much pragmatic about it because a lot of it will depend on customer behaviour rather than my behaviour. I can provide the safe environment, but if customers choose to mingle a lot closer than they ought to, then that's their responsibility.
Understand. So that's a drastic difference between us, and that we want to be as safe as possible. If it's required, we will put up screens, plastic screens in between customers. If that makes them feel safer, that's a different approach from us.
Well, we do the same, but how do you control individuals? If individuals, I suppose you have a compliant, a more compliant population than we do in that sense, because you get different view of the disease. I mean, our population, I can't imagine a large proportion of them will comply, even with lockdown. Our lockdown's been a really loose lockdown with very strict rules coming from the government, but you know, we're not used to in England following strict rules. So it's probably quite a different cultural thing going on.
I think one thing that's really different between us is that I was mentioning that there's an app on our phone. It's kind of like on our Facebook, the China's version of Facebook WeChat, that you can just pull it out, and then through big data they track where you have been and who have you been interacted with, and if any of these people you're interacting with were in the high risk zones per se. So it's more or less assurance for us. You go to malls, people check that QR code, check that app. You go to any public places, they will check that they'll check that app. So in that way is that we feel much more assured knowing that the people who we are exposed to are at the lower risk.
That's interesting. I mean, we're getting an app. I don't know if it will be as advanced as your app, but half the population won't download it to their phone because they feel it's intrusive to have an app and be monitored in that way. Another half of the population probably will download it. I mean, it's quite interesting because the app's not ready. One of the restrictions they're putting on pubs is to collect the names and telephone numbers of customers coming in. And how we do that and how we verify the names is an interesting point because we're going to end up, if there's a COVID outbreak, trying to contact Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck because that's what people are going to write unless we verify it. People here have got a different view of it. You know, some will very much comply and are very much keen to get the software and the app. Others will not do an app. And there's also the older population here who don't have smartphones. And in my pub, a lot of my customers are the older generation who want to pay in cash and don't have a smartphone. So they're very difficult to deal with these types of solutions and apply them generically to England. So it's quite interesting to hear the difference in approach.
Definitely. So that was, I think the app itself is one of the key things that we have enforcing. Well, it's also from the government. I think our government did a great job in rolling that out very soon. And it really gives the public, not just the public, the shop owners, but also the consumers, an assurance that we are safe. So Shanghai per se, it's much more a commercial city, and then the story I can share is that at one point, our customer base was mostly Westerners. So, and then the news were saying that now the cases are all from overseas people. So a lot of whoever flies into China, some of them carry the disease. So there's a stigma against foreigners. So for a few nights, that when we're packed with foreigners, Westerners, Chinese local consumer would come over to us and be like, "Hi, Anthony, excuse me, your bar looks very risky," and we're like, "No, that is not the case. We've checked, we do all the precaution to ensure everyone's safety." But the stigma is still there. So people are highly sensitive about this.
That's really strange, isn't it, culturally? That difference.
Yeah.
Do you take temperatures of people
Yes.
on the way in? You do?
Yes,
Yeah.
we do. And we also have the sanitizers highly accessible around the pub. The hand sanitizers. So that's from the entrance we require firstly we require a customer to wear a mask. Secondly, we check temperature, check the QR code, and wash their hands before entering.
So how do they eat with a mask on? I mean, presumably they're allowed to take them off to eat.
Well, we suggest that we cannot enforce them to wear the mask, and they cannot eat realistically with the mask on. It's just when they're at the table, they feel free to do whatever they want, but when they leave the table, we say, as a friendly advice, we advise them to wear a mask.
Oh, right, cool. I mean, what I might do similar, you know, so that's a similar thing. I wouldn't force them. I don't think I can force them. But as I say, England isn't forced to wear masks at all, apart from on public transport. And even then, you don't need to wear a mask. You can just have a scarf around your mouth and nose, you know. So it's all very different here. But it's interesting. You're trying to, quite clearly, your country's trying to suppress the disease, whereas there's a large proportion of people here who think herd immunity will arise from the disease, that it will go around the population anyway at some point, and the measures to restrict it are probably more onerous than the impacts of it going around the community.
It is quite different in terms of that. But how do you expect you can? What do you expect to do, especially in terms of maintaining that loss that you get from the regulations? For example, will you diversify your service? What will you do differently this time you open?
Do you know, that's interesting because you know, I haven't really thought that far ahead. It's a bit like when we closed. I thought we were going to be closed for 3 weeks, and here we are 4 months later. I'm hoping, and that's why we've gone into this discussion, I'm hoping the restrictions will be lifted. And certainly by Christmas, either the disease won't have made a resurgence here, or will be a lot weaker here. And that's what I've heard is happening in Italy. Italy says that the people who are going to their hospitals are not as ill as the people who were going to the hospitals a few months ago with COVID. So our strategy is not suppression. It's suppression of probably local outbreaks if there is some, and to keep it at a low level. But we accept that it's going to be there and people are going to get it. We're not going to eradicate it completely. So I'm hoping the restrictions will lift and lift and lift, so that by the end of the year, Christmas Eve, the busiest night of the year for every pub in England, we'll be able to have 350 people in, squashed together, but still having lots of great fun. But yeah, I may be completely naive and wrong there.
Yeah, but Gary, you mentioned that you want a full house again, but how do you stay connected with your customers throughout the whole 4 months?
Well, do you know, we've had a great Facebook sort of page. We've got a membership page, and it's actually growing in the 4 months. And we'll be doing a weekly sing-along. So we choose a theme every week, whether it's country music, jazz music. This week it's #1 hits. And we all sing a song and post it on Facebook, and it gets people going. We get some professional musicians, some amateurs, some good, some bad. It creates a lovely atmosphere. And we've also been passing jokes to one another and talking about the current situation. So we've had lots of interaction. Plus the takeaway, as I mentioned earlier, we've been, really, really engaging with customers on that. And some just come for a chat. They don't actually want to buy a takeaway beer, but they do so. But they're just coming to see us and support us, and it's really, really good community spirit.
Yeah, because I think pubs are sometimes like a hub, like the center of community activities. So with measures like this, I think it really helps people to stay connected, and also to help them get the sense of belonging when they're back at your pub later.
Absolutely. If you're part of that pub culture or part of the community, then people have been missing it because it's their social, it's the chance to catch up with other people, it's the gossip, it's discussing politics or either local or national, and there's fun bits as well. We have an astronomy club, we have a book club, we have bingo, we have quizzes, we have live music. So there's events for people to go to, and it really is a community asset. The whole purpose of the pub is to socialise. So COVID is a real spanner in the works in terms of limiting those social contacts and limiting what we can actually do.
So Anthony, what's your take on that? Do you feel the same?
We, as living in a metropolis, the sense of community is less than I would say in the UK. In that the pub is more. Our location was chosen based on not on the neighborhood, but also more on the fact that it's surrounded by office buildings. With the COVID that hit us, actually, the traffic within this area has been horrific, struggling, and it's very frustrating for us. And so instead of relying on the geographic or what's given by geographically, we are raising our own community, because Guinness itself is it draws a big crowd. That's a lot of, either you don't love Guinness or you love Guinness to death, the kind of thing. In China, so we've gathered this group of people with groups, social groups, and we found out that within a trusted community or a organized community, people are less. They are more trust. They trust more around around people. Sometimes they don't wear masks when they talk to people that they know of, and they're not as mindful for their social distancing compared to hanging out with a stranger. So knowing that insight, we built our own community. That's one key thing that we've done. And another key thing we've done is that we work with associations and organizations, existing groups that already know each other. So we've hosted things like salsa night, with a dancing studio where forced to close down during the COVID period. We rent out the space for them, and they you can see that because they know each other, they're comfortable with no matter where space is.
Yeah, exactly. I think even if the pubs have to function on a much smaller scale than before, I think for many people who have been through this lockdown and gradually getting their lives back, it's important to get a pint and at a place where they could connect and talk to each other. And exactly like us, I think we're having this conversation over 8,000 kilometers. So it's very important to talk to each other and to share. So I think we're going to wrap up here. Thank you both gentlemen for taking part in the chat today. And also thank you for our CGTN viewers. Please stay tuned for more of our programs on TV, Facebook, and Twitter. So enjoy the rest of your day, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to Anthony.
Good luck, Gary.
I hope to meet you one day. See ya.
Good luck, Gary.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.